and I knew that something was up. I didn't pay attention to it. It was for the LA Times. My students from NYU Abu Dhabi, and we're going to talk about that in the post chat, because you guys, if you ever wanted to know what the world is thinking, I can actually bring them to Zoom. So not everything about COVID has been bad. I'm doing the focus group and my arm gets numb and I could not figure out what's going on. And then that numbness went across my face. And I'll be very candid with you. I went to the front desk. I was staying at the DoubleTree. And what I was really there for is to get more cookies, because at that moment, I weighed 236 pounds. I weigh 175 now. So I don't eat cookies anymore. But in going up to ask them, I knew that I wasn't feeling right and I needed to go to the hospital. And I said, which one should I go to? And they said, we got a Catholic hospital that's 2 miles in the west, and we got a Presbyterian hospital that's 2 miles in the east. This is the last joke I think I've told since then. I asked the people behind the desk, which of those hospitals is more likely to save a Jew? I don't know why I did that. It made them laugh. I know that it's politically incorrect now, but I ended up going to the Catholic hospital, and my doctor's Jordanian, who became a friend of mine. And in November, if Israel ever opens up again, we're going to take a trip. He's going to join me. I'm actually going to travel with my doctor to Israel and to Jordan. His family is a friend of the kings, and I'm going to introduce him to the Israeli prime minister. So you never know when you get an opportunity to bring peace and understanding to the world. So please take advantage of it. That's great. I'm looking at the comments now. Love the cookies. The cookies are awesome as long as they don't go to oatmeal. So if any of you have any influence with the people at DoubleTree, chocolate chip works. Nobody likes oatmeal. So I want to bring up the little presentation I prepared for you guys. And what we're going to do, which is a little bit different, is that I'm going to show you what the American public is thinking on a number of different issues. And we're going to break this presentation in a number of different categories. So every 3 or 4 minutes, I'm going to stop and take questions. And Gail, you're going to tell me whether you're going to ask their questions from the chat or whether you're going to bring them in. Whatever you want to do is fine with me. And so you all know, one of the greatest prerequisites of presentations now is that nobody wants to wait to the end to ask their questions. If you don't make it interactive, people disconnect. And so you should be insisting in your meetings that there is this constant give and take. Asking people to sit back is just not acceptable anymore. So I want to start with corporate America, because I'm going to put the politics stuff off as late as I can into this call, because it's the one that makes everybody so angry and so frustrated. It is so dangerous to tell jokes now about our politicians. I used to love this one that I did, and this is a true story, with Donald Trump. I was at the White House Christmas party in December, and I finally got the guts to go up to the president and ask him, what does the J in Donald J. Trump stand for? You know what he told me? Genius. Now, normally that would get a great laugh, but I can't hear you guys right now. And it's probably my best line. And so I balance it off with Joe Biden, who, as you all know, if he's elected, and he's leading now, truly leading, that he would be the oldest president ever. In fact, he's so old it takes him an hour and a half to watch 60 Minutes. He's so old. His favorite painting is The Last Supper. If you look carefully, he's actually the second waiter from the left. Joe Biden is so old, the only time he doesn't have to pee is when he's peeing. He calls himself a constitutionalist. He should be. He was actually there in the room when they wrote the document. So I do a few political jokes, but I have to be careful to make sure that it is perfectly balanced, because the public insists on it.
I was going to say earlier that people expect Frank to be bright and have a lot of data, but what they're often surprised with is how funny he is. So I'm glad you shared those jokes. You got a lot from me.
Yes, I appreciate it. Thank you. So let me show you a couple of things about corporations. There's only about 3 or 4 slides in this segment, and I'm going to take some questions on this, and then we'll do a little bit on where we are as a country. Notice, and I work with Blue Cross Blue Shield, and I love presenting to their organization, because this is the slide that they like most. They ask me, keep it up. No industry, no companies have improved their reputation more than doctors, nurses, and hospitals. If you were to go back 1 year ago, they were despised. And every time that I would do this presentation, they would put their heads down and look down in the ground and cover their face. And it's not that way anymore. In fact, I would tell you that this is a very interesting way to communicate to people, is to put together a group of doctors, nurses, and medical professionals, because they've got more credibility than anyone. And who's number two? Grocery stores. These are the groups that are growing. And that third one, technology, the one thing I do not understand is why Washington is beating the hell out of technology when it has companies like Amazon and Google have become so essential to us over the last 5 months, and they really matter. And the only two industries where people are less likely to feel good about them are airlines, obviously, because they're afraid of them, and the media. It's interesting to me that the people who are giving us the information about politics, about what's going on, is the least trusted industry in America today. The media are so bad that they do as poorly as members of Congress. And let me show you specific companies, because this will give you an idea of who's doing great and who's doing badly. Notice Amazon, which is under attack by Washington, is the third most respected and appreciated company for products and services of any of them. And we looked at it, 100 different corporations. And if you look at ethics, Hulu is number 6. Go look at the trust, Amazon's top 10, Hulu's top 10. Now, it's true, if you look at the other side, that you got a company like Fox Corporation is in the bottom 10 for trust. Comcast doesn't do well for ethics. And Comcast is the worst for products and services. Now, I had the chance to present to them because I worked for NBC Universal, and they did not want to hear this. But if you want to figure out, nothing matters more than trust in this COVID environment. Ethics is number 2, which is why we put this up here. And then number 3 is what you provide consumers, products and services. By the way, there's one category that's missing here, and that's treatment of their employees. And it's not something that I provided to you on this presentation, but we've got it. What are the words and phrases that employees need to hear and want to hear from companies that'll give them faith that they're respected, that they're valued, that they're doing the right thing with COVID, and that they can be trusted with the things that you buy and the things that you consume. And I would look at the bottom 10 also, how badly Twitter does. It's the only company other than Monsanto that's in the bottom 10 for everything that matters: trust, ethics, and products and services. So I thought this would be interesting because we can do any kind of profile. You just have to tell us what you care about. And what's also important is how people see CEOs. Now, you know that politicians are really distrusted. And if you come in worse than politicians, you got a problem. Business leaders, the public sees business leaders as essential, not just to our economy and not just to our way of life, but in solving the problems of the workforce and solving the problems that with COVID, basically just being problem solvers. But when you put CEOs of large corporations against political leaders, they do badly. Even among Republicans, they prefer political leaders to CEOs of big companies. Why? Because we don't trust multinationals. The thing that we're most afraid of right now is globalization and automation. And we believe CEOs put profits over people. So if you are working with corporations that are trying to figure out how to communicate what matters most to them, how to explain CSR, don't have your CEO doing it because they're simply not trusted. Now, we're going to do a little bit on America, but before we do, Gail, why don't you pull 2 questions out from the list so far, and then we'll go back. we're going to go back and forth. I want to answer your questions, and I want to give you as much information as I can in the 30 minutes we have.
Perfect. Becky Kurtz is one of our clients, and she runs a speaker series called the Desert Town Hall. And she wants to know why isn't the stock market reflecting what's happening in the real world?
Oh, this is very easy to tell you, and it has nothing to do with communication. There's nothing to do with politicians or business. It doesn't even have to do with the economy. The reason why it's doing so well is that it is awash in cash. We are spending so much money right now, money that we don't have, money that's going to cause an increase in taxes, money that could create a debt crisis in the year ahead, or could create inflationary pressure that we've not seen since 1980. But we are spending so much money to keep the markets and the bonds and the other national investments, both on a governmental scale and on an individual scale. Why have so many big companies not gone bankrupt? Because the government is essentially bailing them out, and the original COVID legislation, the PPE and PPP, all went to businesses to keep them afloat. We still have high unemployment, and we're going to have it for some time to come. The economy is still going to be under pressure as we go through the rest of the summer and the fall and even the winter. But there is so much money that has come from the feds, and there's a line that it's not worth the money that it's printed on. Well, we are printing more money than we ever have before. The machines are working overnight, and that's why the market is so high. And by the way, I know that you can't understand it. I couldn't understand it. It's one of the reasons why I sold 70% of my holdings, because I knew what the economy was. With this polling, it allows me to know who's buying and what they're buying. And what we learned as a final answer to this is that Americans were willing to pay up to $500 for the things they needed, but over $500, no way, which is why the auto industry's had trouble, which is why big ticket items like refrigerators and stoves have had trouble. The public is not willing to spend the money. They're hoarding it. And so the only way to get over that is for the federal government to be inserting as much cash as they can into the economic system. And that's why the markets are so high. Good question.
Becky had another question. I know you want to say politics more towards the end, but you made a comment, Biden is strongly in the lead. Her question is there enough hidden support for Trump that would put him over the top?
Is there enough which support?
Hidden, like you just
support. Okay, I'm going to ask you to hold that because I want to do that when we get to that part of the presentation. Let me give you a little more background about where Americans are, what they're thinking, how they feel right now, and then I'll definitely do that question. In fact, I'm even writing it down. I learned from my father that you have to prove to people that you take them seriously. And the way you do that is if you delay a question, you got to come back to it. So I've written it down. These are the key elements of what's happening right now, and there are 8 of them. There are only 6%, is who I wanted to win on the question. There are only 6% of Americans who are truly undecided. Do not believe the polls that show it at 15% or 12%. They're not measuring it properly. Somebody can say to you that they're undecided, but they're really not. If they've decided that they're definitely not voting for Biden or Trump, that's not an undecided voter. That's someone who's made up their minds. They're just not ready to confirm it yet. They're unconfirmed voters. I'm looking for those undecided. It's only 6%. It has never been that low, and they don't like anyone. It's not like they're choosing between 2 good candidates. To them, they're choosing the lesser of 2 evils. Second is that this is not just about social inequality. This is not an election just about Black Lives Matter. The number one issue for Democrats by the time we reach election day is going to be economic inequality and other elements of inequality. This is not a priority for Republicans, but it is a priority for independent voters. And this is what Joe Biden is going to use. I believe this and healthcare are going to be his number 1 and number 2 issues going into the fall. For Donald Trump, it's going to be China and China and China. Those are going to be the things that he focuses on. Third, I've never seen a country as divided as we are right now in every possible way. But don't misinterpret regional divisions as, well, the North just thinks differently from the South, and they think differently from the West. The overlay, the political overlay, is stronger than any other attribute right now, and the second strongest is age. So yes, women are more likely to support Biden. Men are actually at this point split 50-50 between Biden and Trump. The reason why there's a gender gap is because there's a political gap between women and men. That men are more likely to be evenly balanced in politics, and women are much more likely to be Democrats. And younger women, overwhelmingly Democratic. And by the way, for those of you who are asking questions, you name me a group and I'll tell you what they're likely to do in November. We've been spending a lot of time on it. Fourth, the reason why Donald Trump is having trouble is not because of what he's done, it's because of what he says. And I do not support any candidate. I only explain what's happening. When you ask people about Donald Trump's record, you get about 46-47% who believe that he deserves to be reelected. It's not, you want to have 50%, but that's not a problem. Hillary Clinton had a job approval when she was Secretary of State that was much higher, and she still lost the election because her favorability was lower. The key for Donald Trump is what he says. And you have 2-to-1 independents dislike it, and even 10% of Republicans dislike it. It's his communication, his language that bothers them the most. Now, if you're a Trump voter and a Trump supporter, you love his communication. But if you're one of that 6% that's undecided, you really don't, not at all. Fifth is the challenge for the economy. And this is a higher percentage than any time since we started asking this question prior to the 2016 election. Elizabeth Warren, it was her phrase that the economy is rigged. Now it's 2/3, 65%. And these are Republicans, Independents, and Democrats. And by the way, a very slight majority of Republicans believe the economy is rigged. And this is another reason why CEOs have a problem, and why I'd say to you that you should be speaking out to your clients, because they want to be entertained by some rock group or some famous speaker. What they really need is to be taught how to communicate. So if you're doing programs like this, you need to show them the words that work. Sixth, this is a tragedy, and I'd be curious to know how many people on this call feel this way. That so many Americans now, a majority, are living paycheck to paycheck. It's the best way to communicate that sense of economic anxiety. It's a term of respect, and it's also a term of reality. And I hope I get to it, but just in case I don't, the best way to communicate this is when you go to sleep at night, and the last thought you have before your head hits the pillow and before you close your eyes, am I going to be able to put food on the table tomorrow? And I'm going to be able to pay my bills. That's the emotional way of communicating. That's what people want to hear. And unfortunately, they're not hearing it from anybody. Sorry to say to you all that the American dream over the last 6 months has taken a real hit. And the public now prefers, by better than 2-to-1, living the good life, because that to them says that they get to enjoy the fruits of their labor. The American dream is something esoteric and something that involves a good career, a great house, the car you want, and it's just beyond the reach of so many people. And eighth, I'm sorry, but American college kids hate capitalism. And I don't know where you stand, but we have a completely different generation today than we had even 4 years ago. And they, a majority of 18 to 29-year-olds, actually a majority, now prefer socialism to capitalism. So Gail, I'll stop again. Questions?
Holly Swansea, one of our big corporate event planner partners, has a question. Do you think there is any truth about Kanye West only being placed on certain states' presidential ballots to assist Donald Trump by misplacing undecided independent voters?
Well, here's the problem. This is a passion project for him, and it's irrelevant to everybody else. This is not Ralph Nader. This is not the libertarian candidate. Kanye is not serious. And there are some states that have a large African-American population where he could draw a percent of the vote. And yes, I think it hurts Joe Biden much more. But Kanye doesn't really care. I don't think he's going to run a serious campaign. He's certainly not going to be included in the debates. And I think he's going to be forgotten. We saw how much effort he put into his first campaign appearance, and he hasn't gone anywhere since. Don't worry about it. I don't believe that he's going to make the difference in any state. But if there's one state to watch Michigan, because that's the state with the closest race between Biden and Trump, with the largest percentage of young African Americans. Let's do one more.
Okay, Phil McDougall, is there one specific game changer event that you think would push the election one way or another between now and the election?
Yes, and I don't think it's going to happen. This is kind of an insider approach. They're very far along on a vaccine. And Donald Trump doesn't understand, even though he's been told to stop talking about it, because that's what October surprise is supposed to be, a surprise. But he's been raising expectations about it. They're going to put these vaccines into production ahead of time, hoping that they pass the third tests, so that when these vaccines are ready, which is going to be about the third week of October, that they'll actually have millions and millions of doses. I now believe, I did not believe until last week, until I got a really good briefing. I believe that the vaccinations are going to be available to some people before Election Day, and that could be a game changer. That's the only thing that I imagine making a difference on behalf of Trump and on behalf of Biden. I think that will make a difference. And God forbid if this happens, is if it is proven that our schools are not only spreaders of COVID, but young people get very sick by going back to school. If you were to have that, whatever support for Donald Trump would collapse. And I'm sure we've got some strong Biden supporters, but please, that's not the America that we want. I hope that does not happen, but yes, that would have a very, very, very big impact. Okay, one more set of stuff, and then we will stop.
Okay.
And in fact, let me go to the key issues right now. It goes off the screen: economy, jobs, cost of living. Watch for higher prices becoming a bigger and bigger issue as we get to November. We have created all the ingredients of inflation. I think it'll start to hit, and I believe that it's going to have a significant impact, if not by this election, by the point that Joe Biden, if he should win, and early in 2021, I think inflation is going to become a very big issue. Also notice that racism and discrimination, even though it's fourth, that there's nothing else below that. And in a matter of 6 weeks, that issue went from 2% as a priority up to 35%. That's what an incident like George Floyd can cause. Again, skip forward. Look at the language of X and the language of Y. One of them is Donald Trump's language. One of them is my language. I bet that probably 95% of those on this call would prefer the language on the left to the language on the right. Law and order to the public means police beating protesters over the head. Public safety means being able to walk around your neighborhood, being able to get to work and back in a safe and secure environment. Nobody wants to be called a warrior, but that's what Donald Trump calls his supporters. They identify as hardworking taxpayers, and that's what matters to them. The silent majority harkens back to Richard Nixon's language from 1968, and he never actually said it. This was a private conversation that he had with his campaign team. I will be your voice is the best thing that Donald Trump said in 2016. It's what we want most from our politicians, to represent us effectively and efficiently in Washington. So I will be your voice is a much better way to communicate. Open the economy is too global. What the public is looking for is returning safely to our individual day-to-day lives. Instead of reopening something that's massive, we want to return back to the life that we lived before. Let me end with a couple things on Trump. We'll do one question. I know we're going to run over, and I'm going to ask you, people, if you can't stay on, jump off. And I apologize for running long, but there's so much to tell you about. I ended up getting to 11 slides. This is a 65-slide deck, and I'm just trying to get to the important stuff. Look at his job as president. Only 39% of the country approve of it, And in terms of the net negative score, if you look at those right numbers, in March, he was only down 4 points. April 8, May 12, June 14, July 21. Who knows what he's going to be down now? He has been deteriorating. The more the public sees him, the more negative it gets. And when I tweet this on Twitter, I get yelled at by Trump people who say the polls are wrong. Well, they're not, because this is all relative. And there may be a couple percent. You wanted me to answer a question about that hidden vote. I'm sure that there's a hidden vote of about 2% that will go from Biden to Trump. But when you're down by 9.5%, that does not cover the hidden vote. And there's one more to look at, which are swing states, because they are the ones that actually matter. Donald Trump is losing by 9.5% nationwide, by 6 points among swing voters among swing state voters. And let's say there's that 2% dishonesty. He still loses by 330 electoral votes. You cannot win. And I'll give you one more incident that can happen, and then I'll take a couple more questions. We'll call it quits. Joe Biden has to participate in the debates. Just as the public does not like Trump's talking too much, they don't like Joe Biden's not talking enough. And if he were to avoid the debates, the public would respond very badly to that. We have the right to know where our candidates stand and the right to challenge them. And they have the responsibility to tell us the truth. This is a centrist point of view. This means Donald Trump, you're going to challenge him, but you can't stay in a bunker for 3 months and not answer the voters' questions. And secondly, as you see that these numbers have deteriorated, if Joe Biden gets lost in a response and simply forgets where he's going, which has happened in a number of his interviews over the last 6 weeks, that would have to happen in 2 debates. 1 debate is only random. 2 debates is a trend. 3 debates is proof. He would have to have that happen to him in 2 of the 3 debates, and 1 of them would have to be the final debate. That is the prerequisite of Trump emerging, even with Biden having the chance to win. This is Biden's election to win. He'd have to lose it. So Gail, I know we're out of time, but let's do 2 more questions, and then whoever wants to stay will go late.
Okay. When you say college students prefer socialism, does that just mean that they are in favor of more government support? More government support to address economic disparities, or more far-reaching economic policies and structures?
Great question. It's both personal, and I would argue selfish, as well as political and more broad-minded. They believe that socialism will eliminate college debt. They believe that socialism will allow them to attend college for free. They believe that they will be financially better off now, even though they don't believe that in the future. But in their 20s, they think that they will benefit from socialism, and that's one of the reasons why they support it now more than capitalism. But the second reason is that the business community has not done a good job, and I'm looking up here, they are ignorant. So Gretchen, I see your comment. Wow, that's pretty strong. How about this? Because I don't necessarily believe that they're ignorant, but I do believe they're less well-informed. And I do believe that they are less likely to see both sides of an issue. I'll give you another statistic among this 18 to 29-year-olds. 49% have written someone off because they disagree with them. And I think that's wrong, compared to only 14% of their grandparents and 30% of their parents. So they are much more likely to reject and cancel people because of their point of view. And that's a system that socialism can encourage. Under capitalism, there's a battle of ideas just as there is a battle of products and services. Socialism, it's much more limited, and I think that there's a political component to it as well. And by the way, you made the comment, Gail, that I challenge people, and I do not wish to do this, but I just say to you, because we're all among friends, this is an internal call, but I'm really careful about the words I use to describe people. That if you use words that are deliberately inflammatory, it does cause a problem. And We are already inflamed. We are already triggered. And you've seen that on the streets of America over the last 6 weeks. I live in LA a lot of the year, and I live in Vegas, the part that I'm not living in LA. And my streets in both communities, and I've got a place in New York and a place in Washington, all four of them erupted in violence. All four of them, I watched windows of stores that I shopped in and restaurants that I ate in. I watched them broken for no reason. I watched these protests do a lot of damage to innocent people when they have every right and even a responsibility to speak out about injustice. So I am very determined to create a new lexicon, which I would show you, of civility and decency and respect. And I would urge you to adopt it for what you do. I think you'll make your clients and your companies that you work for much happier and more satisfied if you do. Okay, one more question.
Do you believe we have ever experienced such perceived diverseness in the House? Seems like they really hate each other. Reagan and Tip had opposite views, but were respectful.
Yes, you're correct. And it was, we were at our best. If you go back, and many of you aren't old enough to remember Ronald Reagan, after all, he was first elected 40 years ago. It's hard to believe. And people were scared when he got elected. I remember the ad, and I can't show them, Gail. The one thing that I've not been able to do is show ads, and I'm figuring out how to do that. But in the future, I'm going to be able to show you video through chats like this. So it'll truly be like being there, but you'll be able to be in the comforts of your own home. You'll be able to use the facilities. I've had so many people eat. And please, we got 50, 60, 70 people on this call. Do not eat on a Zoom call where you are visibly, visible, because it makes people hungry. It makes them mad. I've lost 60 pounds in the last 6 months. It makes me hungry. So please, there's an etiquette. You don't answer the phone in church, and you don't eat on a Zoom call. These are no-nos. Ronald Reagan, after he left office in 1988, 8 years later, 89, we were the most unified of any time. The Democrats and Republicans both believed the country was headed in the right direction. Both believed that they were better off than they had been. Both saw a better future for themselves on everything. Both of them saw a brighter, better future. And we don't have that right now. So I'm going to turn it back to you to allow people to leave quietly. Not that filing out makes any kind of noise. But if you stay on, I'll give you some Zoom ideas and I'll respond to some more questions from you.
Perfect. I thank everybody for joining. For those of you that need to skip off, thank you. We are doing our next one on August 24th with Bernice Flygirl Armour. So you'll be hearing from us. If you're interested in staying on, there are a few things that Frank's going to share with you. One of them is what's behind you on the wall. To those of you that have to leave, thank you for joining us. So Frank, what are those drawings?
So those drawings are very special. And in fact, I'm going to hold up the computer. That right there is the very first execution of Uncle Sam's I Want You. That was the original charcoal that the artist Flagg drew of himself. So actually, he looks really menacing. And that is the very first printing of the poster. They only made 2,200 copies. That poster has been copied tens of millions of times. Nobody had any idea that it was going to be so dramatic and so popular, but it is. And I thought it'd be really cool to show you the backdrop. Now, there's a reason for this. I want you to realize that what's behind you matters. And Gail, I'm looking at yours. It's so meticulous. It is so neat. The TED book, you want everyone to see that you talk to TED speakers, so I can see that. You positioned my book beautifully. You got photographs up there, family up there. This is, when you're doing a Zoom presentation, you really do need to have backdrops that are interesting and impressive. Don't put the fake stuff up there. If you've got your own photograph, that's fine. Don't use the photographs that they supply because everyone knows them and it'll be distracting. Make a backdrop that people are fascinated with, that have things that people are interested in. And just remember that authenticity matters not just with the speaker, it matters what's behind the speaker.
Frank, something that I would like to talk about is something we touched on before the call started, and that is the ability that you have to create unique events because we're doing them on Zoom. I most recently saw one of your Friday shows where Richard Dreyfuss joined at the end. The former Google ethicist was on there. And so talk a little bit about some of the ideas you were brainstorming that we could create really unique events with.
So I wasn't even, I had this technology, but I was nervous about it. So I didn't want to bring people in. And then I just realized, so if you guys hold on, I'm going to give you 3 different ideas for Zoom. You could not get members of Congress to go to Jackson Hole unless it was August. You could not get people to go to Phoenix in the middle of really hot weather. You're in Dallas. You can now, thanks to Zoom, put together an endless panel of the most incredible people that all appear at the same time, and they can be on the call. So you guys are I can't see you. You guys are all part of, you have the ability to ask questions through the chat room. But I did one, which I'm the most proud of. 27 students from 24 different countries talking to the global elite in business, economics, entertainment, sports, politics. I had on 2 ex-prime ministers. I had on a dozen members of Congress and members of parliament. I had 8 of the Fortune 400 richest people and 10 of the richest people on the face of the globe. It was an incredible group. And the students got a chance to answer questions for an hour from these people and from myself. Where else are you going to hear a Russian and a Ukrainian debating how to solve that crisis, or an Indian, a Pakistani, and a Nepal student? I had China and Hong Kong, and the Hong Kong person was so upset about what the person from China had to say. Now, we can do this for politics. We can do this in business. You can have multiple CEOs on. You can create so many panels. I know that you're disappointed that this doesn't allow you the face-to-face communication, but think of what it does allow you. Virtually anyone. I'm going to do a Zoom call with Richard Dreyfuss, as you say. Everybody wanted him on for a full show. So I'm going to add him and John Cleese of Monty Python, or him and Tim Allen. Now, Richard Dreyfuss is unique because he was the only actor who ever, for multiple years in a row, was the #1 box office star. And the reason why I want Tim Allen with him is that Tim Allen's the only person ever to have the #1 rated TV show, the #1 movie, and the #1 book all at the same time. So you can do this for anything. Be thankful that you have, for about 6 more months, the chance to do some amazing, never before done stuff.
I love that. I have 2 more questions that came up that kind of go back to our earlier discussion. Do you think Will Hurd, Republican Texas, will run for president in 2024? I know likely not much time to think about it right now.
No, I don't. Now, Will and I actually ran into each other a week ago. And when I get back to Washington, he gets back to Washington, we're going to sit down. So you'll tell Gail, whoever asked that question, I'll get you an answer, but I don't think so. But if you're interested in a Black Republican who might run, I'd say to you, Tim Scott, who is the senator from South Carolina, an incredible individual. And Tim Scott is working right now with the Congressional Black Caucus to develop a plan to reform the police that has both Republican and Democratic support. That's exactly what we need. Tim Scott is an incredible speaker, and I could definitely see him as a candidate in 2024.
Okay, the next thing I have, Julie Kane. Hello, Julie. Tim Scott is the best, a great man. Okay, this is a big question, so you may just have to say we have to reschedule another talk, but this viewer writes in, I am, as are many people, terribly unhappy with the current polarization of the country. It just keeps getting worse. What will it really take for an implosion and total reorg of the government? And how long will it take to get us there? Do you think it will ever actually happen in the next 100 years? Wish we had some great presidents back and better humans in politics. I miss the decency of Reagan and FDR. Thank you. This has been excellent. So that's a big question.
Okay, I'm not only going to give you an answer, but I'm going to show you how to get there, which is, I'm sorry, this is all this stuff I prepared for you guys. Here you go. These are 21 words for the 21st century. There isn't a corporation, there isn't a politician, there isn't an entertainer that couldn't benefit from this. Imagine is the most powerful word in the English language. Ask people to imagine a brighter future, and everyone's got a different vision in their head, but everyone can agree that this is worth pursuing. Peace of mind is more powerful than security. Security means that you need a gun or a dog or a fence or something to protect you. Peace of mind is above all of that. When you have peace of mind, you can close your eyes and you have no fear. Even better than sustainability, because that just means the status quo. A cleaner, safer, healthier world is what the public prefers. So all of these words here are problem solver. The public isn't looking for leadership. They expect it. That's just table stakes. They want people in politics and in business who know how to identify a problem, address it, resolve it, and then move on. That word down there, inclusion. I don't know if you all know this. I'm sure that you guys have a lot of corporate social responsibility sessions. The problem with diversity, it means that we take some people, but not others. Diversity means we'll take someone from room A, some people from room B, some people from room C. So people get left behind. Inclusion to the average American means that everyone, it's like a hug, that everyone becomes part of the solution. Does everyone help to contribute to the problem? A little bit lower down, I have to earn your trust. Earning your trust is humility. And it's the value that we do the least amount of teaching of any of the important ones. We're very good at teaching kids how to have pride, but we're not so good in teaching them how to have humility. Or beneath that, taking a fact-based approach. All of these words matter. You're told that evidence, we should follow the evidence. The problem with evidence is that there's some for the prosecution, some for the defense. Evidence is argued over. Fact is not. Fact is the way it should be. So what I'd say in conclusion, because I'll get off of this, I have video that's remarkable. The greatest speeches of the last 50 years, all tested to determine what are those speeches and what are the best moments of them. And I'm going to tell you two of them. I didn't bring it here. Go Google when I'm done. Bobby Kennedy's speech in Indianapolis after the assassination of Martin Luther King. It's less than 5 minutes long. It's the number one speech, the number one statement that politicians have ever given. And number two is Barack Obama. His speech in Selma after the crossing of the Pettit's Bridge, Edward Pettit's Bridge, which I think they're going to rename for John Lewis. This speech appeals to Republicans and Democrats alike. You watch him appeal across the aisle. It is incredible. And number three, Ronald Reagan. And notice that in the top three, there are Democrats and Republicans. Reagan's inaugural address in 1981, where he talked about becoming a better country, rings as true today as it did 40 years ago. In fact, it's probably even more important today. There is so much that we can bring to you. It doesn't matter if we're there face to face. Gail, I love that you've been doing this for your clients. I think that this stuff matters. And by the way, Becky, how religious are Americans? Because I see this list right here. We can do the same. That's what Zoom offers, which is you can go back to the questions immediately.
I love it.
We are a less religious nation today, but those who are religious are more so. There are less, we pray less and we attend church less. But if we pray more often and attend church more often. We are more in church and synagogue. We are more intent. And I'm going to close on one final thing. There are 5, 6 predictors of your kids being drug-free, alcohol-free, happy, and healthy. And since you're asking me these questions, I know you care about this. Number 1, how often do you have dinner with your kids at night? You don't realize this, but they may be going nuts being at home, and you may have had enough of them. You are actually reconnecting with them. These last 5 months have been essential in the parent-child relationship, we're going to have less kids that are drifting away because parents have been at home and kids have been at home. So how often you have dinner with your kids? It's got to be 5 nights a week or more. Second, do you take them to religious services? Because if they believe in a supreme being, regardless of whether Protestant, Catholic, Jewish, Muslim, a Hindu, Buddhist, doesn't matter. If they believe in a supreme being, they're more likely to treat themselves and treat others with respect and decency. Fourth, do you check their homework on, actually this is third, do you check their homework on every evening? Because that teaches them that their intellectual development is as important as their physical development. Now, fourth, do they tell you the truth where they are on Friday and Saturday night? And do you demand the truth? And God knows they should not be lying now. Because if you don't know where they are on Friday and Saturday night, you're bringing something back into your house that is very dangerous. If they'll lie to you about that, they'll lie to you about anything. And if you don't demand the truth from them about that, then you're really not doing your job. Fifth, do you take a vacation, which is hard this year, of at least a week at a time with the cell phones where this thing goes away? Which is why I tell you, don't eat. Do not eat on a Zoom call, because that shows that there's something more important to you than listening to the speaker, and everybody else can see it. You'd be amazed at what you will learn about your children and what they will learn about you if you do this. And if you only do it for 2 or 3 days, long weekends don't work because it doesn't break the pathologies. And number 6, do they participate in a team sport? And band does not count. I'm sorry for all. I was a tuba player. I'm sorry, all you trumpeters and violinists. Band does not count. Orchestra does not count, because it's got to be physical. And that teaches the students to be physically responsible to the students with them. So you held on to almost all your viewers. So I apologize for going so long, but we've gone 20 minutes over and almost everybody stayed. I hope this is helpful. And Gail, I'll turn it back to you for your final thoughts.
Yeah, I just want to thank you so much for your time. I love the way you use words, and I love the reminder that we need to pick our words carefully if we're going to change this divide in our country. So it was great information. And hopefully, if you're out there and you're planning any events for your company or your organization, you can see that Frank, it's always current. He started the day with a blank sheet of paper, and then right before we started, he said, well, here's what we're going to talk about today. So I can't book for Frank for a speech next week and tell you what he's going to talk about. That's the beauty of it. And you can have him time and time again. I am sorry we were not able to get to all the questions. I know some of you were asking about slides. I really didn't discuss it with Frank, but if he does make them available, I will share with those of you.
And I've got one more statement, 3 words about reopening the economy, reopening your business. This is for you. And remember that it needs to be individual, personal, and human. You're acting with safety, sensibility, and responsibility. Safe, sensible, and responsible is what they want from you. So guys, thank you very much.
Everyone, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it. Thank you, Frank.
You got it. See you guys.
Bye-bye. Stay healthy, stay well.